The Endless are a new faction in Halo Infinite. They are mysterious and very little is actually known about the particulars of this species. What is known is that in spite of the Halo array being fired, the Endless appeared to still be around immediately following the firing of the array when all sentient life in the galaxy should have been killed. But what is it specifically about the Endless that worried the Forerunners to such a degree that they chose to imprison their entire species on Zeta Halo? Well, the very reason that they survived the firing of the array could be the exact reason that the Forerunners are so worried by the Endless, and how this may relate, at least in part, to the Flood. Hey everyone, welcome back to Installation 00, and not to put too fine a point on it, but the Halo effect kills pretty much everything. Although the specifics of how the Halo actually fires and how it can tune or attenuate its pulse to the cerebral network of various different sentient species to ensure that species of certain biomass and neural sophistication are destroyed, rendering them useless to the Flood and meaning that their bodies are not a potential vector for Flood infestation, what is known is that the Halo effect is devastatingly effective. When the Halo's fired, all sentient life in the galaxy was extinguished. The pulse travels superluminally, which means it travels faster than the speed of light. This means some very interesting temporal anomalies happened as a consequence of the firing of the array. When a photon of light travels at the speed of light in a vacuum, its frame of reference for time stands still. This is a basic principle of physics that we actually have to adjust for with systems as simple as our global GPS systems. We know that velocity adversely affects the passage of time. We know that objects at rest experience time faster than objects that are moving, or rather inversely, time moves slower for objects in motion. This ultimately means that the closer that you approach the actual speed of light, the slower time moves, to the point that a photon of light travelling at the speed of light through a vacuum experiences no time. And although from an outside observer's perspective, a photon of light can take millions or billions of years to cross the gulf of space, from the photon's frame of reference, it was instantaneous. And although the speed of light is ultimately considered to be the speed limit of the universe, in the future, and most definitely in the Halo universe, faster than light travel is very much an aspect of physics. Although it is worth mentioning that travelling at the speed of light through the normal dimensions of space-time is still impossible in the Halo universe. However, due to the existence of, or at least ability to tap into, the 11 dimensions of slipspace, being dimensions that are above and beyond the normal 3 dimensions of space-time, faster than light travel is attainable via this, effectively creating a traversable wormhole into a higher dimension, and then creating another traversable wormhole from that higher dimension back into our normal 3-dimensional universe. But you see, the very fact that in the Halo universe we can travel faster than light, and in particular the effects of the Halo can travel superluminally, means something very interesting happens with time. Time stands still for something that travels at the speed of light, but for the pulse of the Halo, time actually moves in reverse. Now, there is a manifestation that happens as a consequence to outside observers, and that is effectively what's known as a pre-firing echo. This effectively means that although somewhere in the galaxy the Halos had not yet been fired, because their pulse travels faster than the speed of light, and because time moves in reverse the faster than light that you go, the ripples of effect of the Halo's firing pulse could be detected before the halos were fired. A step further still, if a species, and the Forerunners were one, are capable of detecting these faster-than-light particles travelling through space-time, they would have effectively heard the pre-firing echoes before the halos had fired, giving them a warning that it was about to happen. The Endless may just have been a species who were able to detect the pre-firing echoes of the halos. Now, the interesting thing about the Endless is that they had not actually been indexed, or to a degree even discovered by the Forerunners, before the firing of the halo array. Now, bearing in mind not even the precursors, or technically speaking their constructs, that are made of neural physics could survive the effects of a halo firing, why, or rather how, did the Endless survive the firing of the halos, even with early warning? Even if they heard the pre-firing echoes, how did they survive? Well, in the legendary ending of Halo Infinite, the Grand Edict can be heard talking to Despondent Pyre. During this conversation, it is revealed that they are going to imprison the Endless to preserve their truth, being the Forerunners' truth. Now, this can be interpreted in very many ways, but the next piece of dialogue is what I paid particular interest to.
Time will forget they ever existed.
Time is not a construct we can control.
And we cannot allow it to be theirs.
Time is not a construct we can control, chased almost immediately by, and we cannot allow it to be theirs. Now, while that first part isn't exactly accurate, the Forerunners were capable of manipulating time to a degree, but they certainly weren't capable of mastering time, so to speak. But that following sentence suggests that the Endless are capable of controlling time. Now, one can speculate on exactly how that's possible, whether it's an aspect of their biology, or whether it's an aspect of their technology, or a little bit of both, or whether the universe favours the Endless to some degree, as it is demonstrated or at least suggested that time has a will, so to speak, in the Halo universe. You can speculate on this a lot, but the real takeaway here is that it's suggested, heavily implied, that the Endless can control time. Is that how they got around the firing of the halo array? Did they, quote-unquote, hear the pre-firing echoes of the halos being fired, and almost universally moved their entire species forward in time by several hundred years perhaps, to past the effects of the halo array firing, dropping back into normal space and normal time, so to speak, to then find the galaxy absent of life, and much to the surprise of the Forerunners, be the only species left in the galaxy. Again, at face value, you could consider that the reason that the Forerunners decided to imprison the Endless are because the Forerunners committed the worst crime imaginable against the mantle of responsibility by wiping out all life in the galaxy. That is an affront to the mantle of responsibility, even though they put in place the reseeding effort. They indexed species and made sure that they were sorted to be reseeded on their homeworlds after the effects of the halo had worn off. Reseeding life doesn't take away the fact that they murdered an entire galaxy, but I believe it goes a little step further than this. The Flood was the reason that the firing of the array was even necessary in the first place, and the Flood are strikingly good at assimilating species and learning the knowledge of that species and how to use that species' technology and influence to their own ends. So was it that the Forerunners were imprisoning the Endless because they deemed them a threat of revealing the truth that the Forerunners committed mass genocide? Or was it that they were hiding the Endless from the rest of the galaxy's knowledge so that they could never fall into the clutches of the Flood? The Flood learned the ability of time manipulation and suddenly you have an infectious parasite that even on its own is devastating to biodiversity across an entire galaxy, but they're also now capable of jumping past the effects of the halo array through time, meaning that the halos are now no longer effective at dealing with the flood. You now have a flood infection that can completely and utterly defy and bypass any possible measure you could put in place to stop them. It's already quite clear that the flood are able to somewhat infect space and time anyway. They can infect space and time to make space and time appear hostile to sentient life. This was a topic of conversation between the Erdidact and the Isodidact, following the former's encounter with the Flood superintelligence. If the Flood took over the Endless, learned their ways and assimilated them into the Flood's singular consciousness, the Flood would achieve a level of sophistication that could never be matched. This is brand new emergent lore, and we're still relatively in the dark. This narrative is only just being played out in front of us at this time, in the first campaign released for Halo Infinite, of what will hopefully be a series of campaigns where more of this story is explored, but at the moment we just have questions and precious few answers. And I'd love to know what you think about the specifics of why the Endless were deemed such a threat to the Forerunners, and whether this theory that their assimilation into the Flood could spell the end for all biodiversity in the universe was a palpable enough reason to imprison an entire species in the first place. Scroll down below and get talking in the comment section. I look forward to what you have to say. And as always, thanks for watching. Stick your comments down below. I look forward to what you have to say. I want to give a quick shout out to my patrons and YouTube members Neek the Solid Cartographer, Siphonic Storm and Todd Morrison, my Tier 0 Transcendients, Brian, Sebastian, Darian, Red Sea, Stalk of the Realms, Falcon X003, Starlight, Alvin, Flaming Halo, Josh, Legions Lost, Kyle, Cat Erdicam, Schneidish, Leon, Ignizzle, Chris, Cooper, Prophet, and Devon, the holders of the mantle, my glorious Reclaimers, my loyal Metarchs, and all the other patrons and YouTube members that have jumped aboard to support the channel. Much love to you guys. Thanks so much for your support. It's keeping things happening and helping development of the channel and future awesomeness in a big way. If you like Halo lore discussed to insane levels of detail, hit that subscribe button and the little bell icon so you're told the second a new video hits the shelves. Be sure to support us on all major social media channels, including Discord, and if you really love the channel, consider heading over to Patreon and supporting the channel over there, or jumping on as a channel member. It means the world to me and affords you loads of great perks and bonuses, while also helping work towards some awesome stuff in the near and distant future. Take it easy everyone, and find peace in the domain.